The smoking dog. Each act of man is the tryst and double of an hare. Love and death are the greyhounds that curse him. God bred the hounds, and takes his pleasure in the sport. This is the comedy of Pan, that man should think he hunteth, while those hounds hunt him. This is the tragedy of man, when facing love and death he turns to bay. He is no more hare, but boar. There are no other comedies or tragedies. Cease then to be the mockery of God. In savagery of love and death live thou and die. Thus shall his laughter be thrilled through with ecstasy. My wife Jenny had started to take on an office job in our daughter's kindergarten. At that time, it was still a colorful and creative facility on the ground floor of a brick house in a former colliery settlement. The team of kindergarten teachers was supposed to grow, so she took care of the casting of the applicants. One woman in particular aroused her interest. She told me about her, and I felt excited out of nowhere. A few days later, she passed me in the hallway before her casting. After I had dropped off my daughter at daycare, I was instantly energized. I liked her immensely. Hopefully they will take her, I thought to myself in passing. And of course, she got the job. And there began a journey for me that was to turn all my previous experiences in terms of love upside down. At the same time, a lot of things in and about me were turned upside down, of course. I had no idea of this, because you can't think of something like that at all. Never ever. In the further course of this text, all names have been changed, but the events are completely real, at least for me. Everything started harmlessly, but this story will take a course that should break the bounds of my mind. Even with you, this is going to be a pretty intimate trip that I'm going to share with you, so let's get started. Let the tingling begin. I really liked Elaine, outwardly, from the first moment. I was completely honest with myself about that. I noticed that again when a few weeks after she started work, I was sitting dreamingly on the small chairs of the daycare center at the daycare breakfast table, and from a distance of 10 meters, admiring her well-formed bottom. Oops, I thought to myself, you were staring at her butt all the time. She bent down to pick something up from the floor. I surprised myself. I wasn't usually like that. Rather reserved and respectful in dealing with the female sex. And since I've been married to my wife for 5 years at this point, we've been together for 9 years, I haven't had another woman pique my interest. To get straight to the point, I fell in love with Elaine at first sight. But of course, I could not admit that to myself. Married, having a daughter, of course, there was no such thing. Never, ever. There was no way the censor in my head would allow that. I was too loyal to my wife for that. But what about loyalty to myself? I should be forced to think hard about that. I liked Elaine's voice. It made something vibrate deep inside me, like she's singing a song, my favorite song that I had long forgotten, and that she brought back to my memory. It felt like a family member I hadn't seen in ages had suddenly returned from a long journey. I was downright shaken by the emotions Elaine aroused in me. But luckily, I was a man who didn't give a fuck about woman's look. I was into character and intelligence. On occasion, I even observed sapiosexual tendencies in myself. So, Over the next 6 months, I realized that I really, really liked Elaine's character. Also, the way she dressed herself, how she took care of the children at the facility, and how she treated my daughter. Whenever I spoke to her, my subconscious would run through the archaic tally sheet of pair bonding. In the bright point of awareness of my mind, in the middle of my forehead, under my skin and skull cap, tick after tick appeared on this list. Check, check, check. We have a match. All criteria are met. My libido lovingly signaled me to start the courtship dance. But stop, no. Something like that was out of the question for me. I was married and had oh well, you already know that, my dear listener. So, in short, after about half a year with Elaine, I had to admit to myself that I had fallen in love. I still remember that day clearly. I had delivered my daughter, Finey, to daycare. Elaine's shift hadn't started yet. I desperately needed to clear my mind. I decided to drive around the area. This usually helped me organize my thoughts, and that's how it worked. Because it didn't take a kilometer before Elaine drove in front of me in her car. Holy cow. At this point, I knew intuitively this was going to be very special. Right from the start, I really wanted to just hug this woman, and I did not know why, and that almost shocked me. That was an emotional overload, because how should I justify that? On the second day, I didn't know her at all. How could that be? So of course I missed the jump and only hugged her years later on one of my daughter's last days at daycare, shortly before she switched to elementary school. But I'm anticipating. Let's jump back again.